In a world where magic suddenly spawned dungeons, demons, and chaos, it also created awakeners, humans blessed with absurdly broken powers. At the very top of the food chain stood a squad ready to face the terrifying triple S-rank demon, Lord Bellefor, who commanded 5 deadly elements. This squad wasn't just confident. They were built different, calling themselves God's Legion, the strongest awakener team in existence, with their captain, Elias B., calmly introducing himself as a veteran raid leader who had led them for 10 straight years without ever failing, just as countless demons flooded the battlefield to cleanse it for the supreme rulers, prompting Alias Spy to instantly leap forward with his sword and command the squad to move out while casually mentioning this was only their 100th high-level dungeon run like it was another Monday, while Orion, the L-rank lightning shadow dancer assassin, acknowledged the order with professional coolness and the unspoken fact that this extermination mission was labeled L-rank for a reason, leaving only monsters to survive. Like a Sky, the young prodigy mage and Rank Cloud spellcaster unleashed their glacial world spell with the wild excitement of someone who thought the fight was just getting started. As Lucian, the support commander, unleashed the Starfall gravity pole to boost his allies by 200% and crush the enemy with a gravity 100 times stronger, turning the battlefield into a physics-defying nightmare. Elias then activated Annihilation to strike like a walking nuke and wipe everything in his path clean, proving once and for all why he was known as an L-rank, and officially ending the terrifying Trip Shrank Demon Lord, Belelphegor. Sky grumbled that the fight was over way too quickly, while Orion made a joke about going on dates to explore dungeons. Even though Lucian and Elias worried the dangerous mission was too easy, Orion couldn't stop hugging them and talking about vacations, leading to a panicked group dinner plan that made Sky call Elias clueless until she suddenly appeared, snapped her fingers to start the mission, only to have a spellcaster's head pierced clean through from behind, revealing that Sky had been secretly working for the gods all along. Elias couldn't move, because someone had slipped paralytic powder into his breakfast for a whole month, making the slowest and pettiest assassination prep ever. After Sky unleashed his god-tier flower of forbidden entanglement, a broken power that shattered every defense and froze their minds instantly, he casually revealed that the L-rank extramission mission was never about the Demon Lord at all, but was always just a setup to wipe out God's Legion. After Orion and Lucian were impaled by flower tentacles and died right in front of Elias, who screamed in fury at the gods for their cruelty, Sky mockingly knelt to call Elias naive before stabbing him through the stomach to coldly declare that gods never need reasons, then shattered Elias further by revealing their 10 years as brothers was just a game where they were only pawns. After that, Sky sealed the victory by blasting his head, officially wiping out the entire God Extermination squad on May 22nd, 2125, and declaring the rank mission done so he could finally take that well-deserved vacation. But Elias's story wasn't over, because even as he faded away, he heard a voice offering a deal. When he woke up, he discovered he was chained in a strange place where Belphegor was alive and unbothered, showing that a true S-rank demon lord doesn't die easily, and that his secret power to rewind time could send Elias Spy back to fix everything. Elias felt the burning hatred inside him and instantly grabbed the chance for a fresh start after remembering how his teammates died and promising to destroy Sky and the gods behind it, making Belphegor grin and add a mysterious heart as a bonus. But when Elias asked what he had to pay, everything went dark, and the last thing he heard was someone shouting his name as he woke up in 21105 inside Awakener Academy Middle School in Vessel State, Sandhaven, staring at his tiny hands in disbelief as he realized he had truly returned to a time before he ever awakened. As soon as Elias got back to school, reality hit him hard when Miss Huang lost her cool, screaming that messing around in class was bad enough, but fainting right before the big awakening ceremony was just plain silly. Miss Huang clapped her hands to snap everyone back to reality, casually flexing her rare cloud power while explaining the world's 5 elemental forces and how students were split into combat, utility, or special classes, before dropping the biggest news that today would lock their destiny forever, as nearly 100 of them were ranked into green, red, and gold tiers. Everyone had just one shot, so whatever they awakened that afternoon would decide the rest of their lives. Elias listened intently to the rules of no patches, rerolls, or refunds, then watched as a skinny kid named Four Eyes got shoved to the ground by a boastful rank assassin named Magnus, who mocked him and crushed his hand before Miss Wong intervened, only for Magnus to twist the truth and walk away with a fake smile until Elias stepped forward to block him, got shoved aside, and watched as the group prepared to witness everyone failing their awakenings. After that, Elias Spy apologized to Miss Hong, muttering to himself that she was just tough on the outside, but had a good heart because she'd helped him more times than he could count in his past life. Before he could think more, a loud announcement called her class to the awakening chamber, and she warned everyone to keep their heads straight inside so they wouldn't get hurt. Elias Spy quietly thought through the two ways people could wake up in this world. Some gifted warriors like Magnus wake up naturally when their hearts feel too big for their bodies, while others step into a special room to force their powers to bloom. This peak human engineering was built to flood the body with adrenaline and emotion until it snapped awake, and that was exactly why it worked. As the first student stepped inside and woke up as a powerful nuclear mage with a rare blue class title, earning praise and a break from Miss Hong, Elias Biss felt hopeful that awakening was humanity's only chance to change his fate until his name was called and he stepped forward to receive a sharp reminder from Miss Wong to focus, which he accepted while thinking back to his past life where he had awakened as a weak green-class nuclear warrior, been bullied endlessly, and only found his special form much later after reaching the highest rank, wondering if his body still leaned toward nuclear power this time. But as soon as he stepped into the room, the alarm started screaming. The machines started acting up, and the system found 5 elemental powers inside him at once, which made Elias panic and wonder why his body felt like it was about to explode. Just as a system notification popped up in his mind to tell him the Infinite Awakening system was finally online. As soon as the Infinite Awakening system came online, a ghostly screen appeared before Elias Spy, showing that while he already held all 5 elements inside him, he had nothing to start with because each one was at 0, yet the system calmly told him he could pick any element to begin his journey and grow its power over time. Elias watched in shock as the screen revealed a way to unlock every tier from the common green to the legendary gold, realizing this mysterious system was a gift from the demon lord that let him grind endlessly. So while impatient students and doubting teachers waited outside, he calmly stepped forward to reveal his new green tier nuclear warrior class, only for Magnus to burst in and mockingly declare that being green meant staying a nobody forever. As Magnus ranted about power and called Elias and Miss Wong trash, Elias calmly poured a cold drink on Magnus' face, which made the arrogant man lunge with a deadly strike that Elias easily blocked and countered with a swift sword slash to send Magnus flying across the room, coughing blood, while everyone watched in stunned silence. The students stood frozen in shock and the teachers were stunned, while Elias calmly explained that he had chosen the class because his weapon had modest stats but perfect balance, making this kind of combat feel like second nature to him. Magnus stumbled back up, screaming that it was just luck and bragging about his rare red-tier assassin class. Miss Wong froze in horror, realizing the boy's perfect dodge wasn't luck, but a deadly master move that even veterans couldn't learn, leaving her baffled how a student who had just awakened pulled it off until Magnus flashed his red dagger, threatening to ruin Elias's reputation while Elias just smiled, knowing that judging people by their starting point was the fatal mistake that only someone like Magnus would regret too late. Even though Magnus' powerful family and Miss Huang's desperate pleas to unite against a future enemy couldn't stop him, the arrogant boy mocked the defenseless Elias, boasting of his double the power and laughing like a winner, while everyone quietly realized that in this cruel world, swallowing your pride to survive was the only smart move left. But Elias Spy wasn't playing that game because Magnus had activated Berserk, boosting his power so much that Miss Wong screamed for Elias Spy to dodge, knowing he couldn't block such a fast and strong attack, while Magnus bet that Elias Spy would try to parry again and waste his stamina. Elias Spy's mind stayed calm and sharp as he chose to dash instead of dodging, instantly speeding up so much he phased right through Magnus' attack, reappeared behind him to strike mid-swing, and left Magnus collapsed in pain, while the crowd confusedly argued about what they just saw, meaning she saw that what looked like luck was actually mastery, so deep it seemed invisible, realizing Elias Spy fought with instinct as natural as breathing, while Magnus looked foolish to the whispering students, and Elias instantly learned that winning fights and killing enemies boosted his class and element points. Though he laughed at the weak numbers and planned to grind dungeons endlessly, knowing the nuclear warrior class would soon unlock game-breaking skills after leveling up, this time he needed to grow much faster than before. But just as he thought ahead, Magnus stumbled up again, clutching his dagger for a blind sneak attack from behind, only to be frozen by a stern voice as the disciplinary dean arrived to shut it down, further humiliating Magnus by questioning if he'd embarrassed himself enough for one day before dismissing the crowd and ordering everyone home to tell their families about their awakenings, which made Elias Spy suddenly freeze as a terrifying realization hit him that May 22nd, 21105 wasn't just important because of his rebirth, but because something catastrophic had happened on this exact date in his past life that he absolutely couldn't let happen again. Later in the office, Magnus was furious about losing to luck, until the dean silenced him by revealing that Elias's spy didn't rely on chance, but performed a near-flawless move that even veterans couldn't copy. Magnus warned that Elias' spy was nothing like a professional fighter, but far away, Elias' spy ran until his lungs burned while staring at a familiar building from his past. Panting hard as painful memories surged back, he realized this moment was the real turning point and had to stop what was coming, finding himself back in the living room on May 22nd, 21105 at 6 p.m., where his father laughed at a silly show on the TV while his mother washed dishes. And stepping into this painfully familiar home hit him like a landmine, as his dad casually noted how unusually early he was back. When Elias saw his mother, smiling gently at him, a crack of hope formed in his heart as he realized she was truly alive, even as she signed to him about her favorite cottage noodles, while he desperately insisted he wanted pickled fish instead. Pushing her to buy it immediately despite her playful scolding, Elias felt her snap back, accusing him of ignoring his awakening day demands for good news while standing with all the authority of a terrifying C-rank lightning warrior named Leoan, who had clawed his way from nothing to a 26th level status. But when Elias quietly admitted he hadn't awakened yet, Lucan mocked him as a loser comparable to a neighbor's child, claiming he should have at least gotten a red tier like his own father, who had sacrificed everything to reach that moment. Before Lucan could unleash his aura and demand answers, Elias finally revealed he had awakened to green tier, causing Lucan to snap completely and smash a bottle over his head while screaming about disgrace and beating him like a punching bag, leading Elias to realize with bitter clarity that his father wasn't just an awakener, but a violent one who couldn't control his rage. Just as the blows landed and triggered a memory of Lucan went wild with rage the moment he found out he was a green tier. Just as his mother had always tried to shield him, Elias froze in terror while Lucan battered her for an hour, breaking her leg and shattering her mind, leaving him to cry in guilt for years before waking up in the present as a powerless E-rank fighter with no special abilities to help him against Lucan's relentless attack. As Lucan's glowing panel flashed in his mind, showing red tier stats that proved even a gold tier Elias couldn't beat him right now, and then grabbing him by the hair to rant about regret and anger, Elias finally realized the truth. His father had come home early just for this fight. He knew it wouldn't stop until someone finally broke, so he let himself get beaten just long enough to send his mother away, only to watch fate twist the knife when the door flew open and she stumbled back in with groceries, having rushed home because she couldn't bear the thought of him going hungry. Outside, she worried all along while he and Lucan turned with a cruel grin, mocking her for returning to see the worthless trash she'd given him. Elias's heart sank as he realized that no matter how many times he was reborn, this exact moment would repeat itself unless he changed it. And as he bled on the floor, the terrifying memory of his past life crashed back, where he had shocked a death row inmate by skipping from a low green tier straight to the highest platinum rank, only to reveal that he was there for brutally beating his own mother to death, a rage that now made him charge at his father and get swatted away like a tiny fly, proving that even without superpowers, he was still just a normal person whose body could be crushed by a single blow. Though he forced himself to stand up again, shaking but still standing, his mother stepped in front of him just as his father slammed the door shut and turned his anger toward her. While he screamed in rage about his useless brothers and his father's future resting on a worthless son, Elias suddenly blinked, vanished, and reappeared right before his mother to block the attack, sending his furious father flying backward. As Elias stepped in front of her to block the man, he sliced his father's sleeve just enough to draw blood, which only made the man laugh harder, mockingly declaring that Elias hadn't grown up at all before cracking his knuckles. Elias gripped his energy-forged sword, trying to buy time as his father attacked again, but his defense shattered instantly under the crushing force that sent him coughing blood and made his ribs scream while his father sneered, mocking his weak class and calling him a foolish kid who didn't know his place. But Elias promised himself in his heart that history would never repeat itself. As Elias's father grabbed another chair to mock him for thinking power made him someone, his mother instinctively shielded him while trembling and begging in silence against his father's shouts about who truly ruled the house, raising the chair high until suddenly violent pounding shook the door and a voice outside yelled for it to be opened, making Elias's heart race as he recognized this moment while his father cursed and stormed toward the door, yanking it open to find two men standing there. Inspection Team Deputy Captain Gavin Lee, an A-rank Divine Class Awakener, and Investigator Derek Chun, a B-rank Divine Class Officer, who calmly questioned why it took so long to answer and announced they were searching the building after reports of a wanted fugitive sighting, showing a photo as Elias's father laughed it off, claiming the criminal's face was plastered all over the city and that he'd report him instantly. As he stood there, Elias' spy was covered in blood beside his mother, but Gavin's sharp gaze caught on him, and when asked what happened, Elias Spy's father calmly lied that the boy was just clumsy and fell while running errands, dismissing the whole thing as if it wasn't worth paying attention to. Elias wiped the blood from his mother's hands and spoke up, declaring that his father had done this, which froze the room as his father slowly turned around with fury exploding across his face, realizing that everything was about to spiral completely out of control. Rewind 18 minutes to downstairs, where Elias had cleverly turned a landline phone into a weapon to anonymously report seeing someone who looked exactly like Snow, the wanted psycho who was just walking into Building A of Violet Estate. Realizing he had changed history and bought himself 15 days to grow stronger, Elias clenched his fist, knowing that though he'd lost the beating, he'd gained his father's rare safety right, a treasure earned through betrayal that once pulled him from rock bottom to C rank. So he quietly opened the hidden vault his father kept secret, pulled out an A-rank Kun blade, and stepped into an undiscovered dungeon, fully aware it was a demon-infested death trap meant for teams, but choosing to go solo because he had no other option. Stepping into a freezing cloud where the cold bit deep. Instantly realizing a danger, Elias saw a level 2 blood-fawn wolf ambush him at insane speed, so he dodged and jammed his cracked blade straight into its mouth to cleanly bisect it and kill the beast, confirming the weapon had absurd stat boost that patched his power gap. Though he grimaced at how weak he felt compared to his L-rank days, and calculated it would take slaughtering dozens of wolves just to level once, only to hear more growls echo through the frozen terrain as an entire pack emerged led by a level 4 E-rank Wolf King, causing Elias to exhale sharply and think that getting dogpiled straight out the gate was insane luck. But as he squeezed the blade tighter, his eyes turned cold because whether he was crazy or not, this dungeon was now his battlefield, and he wasn't going anywhere. Elias Spy went absolutely feral the moment the wolves charged straight into them like rent was due, landing critical hits left and right while dodging, countering, and slicing so fast the blood-fawn wolves didn't even realize they were dead until their health bars emotionally disconnected from their bodies. As the battle grew wild, Elias spun through enemies like a blender on fast forward, leveling up with every kill until he faced the blood-fawn Wolf King, only to dash in, slice the giant beast to pieces, grab its diamond, and hit level 2 with 12 new stat points, confirming he had officially reached D-rank status. He soon figured out that E-rank bodies were as flimsy as wet cardboard, so he wished he had a dimensional bag because leaving even a scrap of loot behind felt like a personal insult. As he held his priceless Snow Wolf diamond, he realized that facing monsters alone was a nightmare compared to the safety of a guild team, which meant he'd eventually have to join the legendary god guild to unlock the best dungeons, since failing at the academy meant being stuck forever, just like his father, until suddenly a swarm of wolves appeared, forcing him to sprint and slash trees to block their path, only to freeze in shock when a giant python cloud slithered in. After a chaotic brawl with dozens of monsters and a rampaging bear that Elias secretly loved for its mindless rage, he cleverly collapsed the icy bridge they stood on to crush his foes, leapfrogged his level to 7, and instantly unlocked a special title that made him even stronger just by being outnumbered. Something felt wrong because every dungeon had a boss, and after all that chaos, nothing had shown up yet. Just as an icy blast froze the barren wolves instantly and forced Elias to dodge, he finally realized the truth. The boss hadn't been sleeping, it had been waiting patiently for everyone to tire themselves out, and as the ice crawled up his leg, he understood that the ice bridge was bait from the very beginning. Then, right at cue, the Dungeon Lord made its presence known. He is a powerful cloud sorcerer who rules a dungeon, though his title is just the lowly D rank of level 11. The Darkwood Lord stood smiling beside his E-rank vice commander and 2 Darkwood apes as the dungeon's terrifying true name, Frost Peak, finally appeared in Elias B's frozen vision, revealing that this intelligent and extreme threat was only the start of a real fight. Elias B stood frozen stiff alongside every leftover mob member who wasn't part of the boss's inner circle, feeling the cold gnawed at him like unpaid rent as he panicked that he'd lose all his body heat before the fight even restarted. While the Darkwood Lord laughed and sent his ape minions to attack, forcing Elias to shatter his ice bonds, burn everything around him, and strike so fast it left the boss stunned, all while Elias fought the exhausting urge to drain his own stamina just to break the enemy's control. But he had no choice, because if the sorcerer got a moment to cast a powerful spell, it would be game over, and sure enough the boss just smiled, clenched his fist, unleashed the frozen bear, and sent it flying at Elias Spy in a calm but deadly fury, making Elias think bitterly how those explosive types were already outsmarted by the Cloud Masters. With his strength gone and surrounded by apes, a bear, wolves, and a freezing magic user, Elias's mind snapped into survival mode, remembering his past lives where every near-death experience sharpened his instinct to find the one-in-a-million escape. So while ice chunks rained down and froze his leg mid-air, he had no choice but to dive off the cliff and hope for the impossible. Just as the boss and monsters cheered, thinking Elias had jumped to his death, the ice beneath him cracked mid-fall, shocking the dungeon lord, only for the scene to suddenly cut to Elias's home, where his mother found his bed empty and a strange note, making her worry deeply because her son would never write something like that and seemed like a totally different person since yesterday. As Elias burst from the freezing river at the cliff's bottom, gasping for air and holding onto an ice rock, he grinned because his big gamble had paid off. As the icy path gave way, nearly 100 monsters plunged to their doom. Though only about 60 people died and the river remained his only lifeline, Elias crawled painfully onto the shore, his body screaming warnings of frostbite and breaking down under the shock of his near-fatal fall. As his world faded to darkness and his eyes closed, he muttered with a heavy heart, wondering if this was truly where everything stopped. Lying there with only shallow breaths, Elias started to wonder if the relentless hard work had finally killed him. As the monster's rumbling growl drew near, he looked up to see a towering glacier giant looming over his broken form. And just as the feeling of dying hit him, the memory of his life flashed back like a tragic movie montage. Orion shouted that he'd returned without offering her a drink, while a porter begged him to make sense of the confusing information. His mother softly asked if his head still hurt, but then a dark figure crashed down as his father looked on and told him to just die, while Sky finished him off and declared his story over. Something snapped inside Elias because he knew he couldn't afford to hold back again, especially after already dying once. Rage, regret, and an absolute refusal to lose surged through him as he forced himself up, grabbed the glacier overlord's jaws with bare hands, and pried them open like he was tearing destiny apart, while screaming that he would never let history repeat itself since he had already lost everything once. With a kick so hard it sent the overlord flying and broke a fong, Elias stumbled back, panting with his dagger ready as a fresh burst of power surged from deep within him. Staring death in the face triggered his advancement, and even though the requirements were missing, the system still gave him a broken nuclear swordsmanship skill that made Elias grin like a maniac as he realized he'd unlocked an ultimate move while surrounded by tundra bears, blood-fawn wolves, and the glacier overlord. He decided that if the breakthrough wasn't coming, he'd just wipe the board clean anyway. By activating his skill Oblivion, he unleashed a massive 360-degree slash that wiped the battlefield clean, slicing wolves, a bear, and the overlord in half while instantly healing his battered body and restoring his stamina. As he reached E-Rank 8 and earned the title Tundra Vanquisher with new bonuses against cloud creatures. He casually finished off the remaining monsters as if they were just beginner practice dummies. Now that fighting E-Rank enemies felt like playing with toys, the cold didn't bother him since Oblivion had saved his life energy to blast his foes. So while he climbed out of the frozen canyon holding a rock and worrying that his mom would freak if he got stuck too long, he suddenly heard noise above and saw the dungeon boss standing calmly with his 8 minions hanging back like unpaid interns. As Elias climbed into view with one eye opening, he was instantly ambushed, yet he only smirked and muttered, while round 2, casually noting that he had already capped a rank at level 10 while climbing. Smooth as hell. While Elias fought the very concept of destiny at home, his mother paced like a glitching character stuck in a loop, wondering where her son had vanished, praying for his safety even as she stubbornly cooked his meal, waiting for him to walk in any second. And all the while, back in the dungeon, the Darkwood Lord stepped up onto the Tundra Bear's dead body like a dramatic hero arriving for the big final showdown. The Dungeon Lord was laughing while pointing, which was still funny to one of the Darkwood apes until that ape leaped in only to be instantly knocked out by Elias, who gained 70 experience and shook the boss so hard that he panicked, cast a blizzard, and hurled a storm of ice crystals at Elias. This time, Elias didn't even flinch because his cloud resistance made the ice attack feel like a tickle, letting him walk right through it like a villain ignoring explosions, close the gap instantly while the boss tried to flee, slice off its arm holding the staff, and turn the Darkwood Lord into a horror-struck mess as blood sprayed while Elias unleashed a storm of slashes to kill the level 11 dank cloud sorcerer, earning a massive 1,000 experience points that boosted him straight to D rank. Nuclear Warrior with all his stats multiplied in extra points, landing him at level 11 E rank, followed immediately by back-to-back notifications because his cloud elemental absorption had maxed out and triggered a new class awakening, making Elias realize he'd been fighting so hard he forgot this could even happen. He unlocked a red-tier E-rank class for a cloud mage that he could switch to any time. Even though it was just an E-rank skill, its massive 200% boost made it as strong as a D-rank warrior's. While the extra gear he found left the other apes frozen in fear as he switched classes, flexed his glowing aura, and claimed he still had work left to do before stumbling home at 5 a.m. On Saturday, May 24th, his tired mom barely woke up when the door creaked open and she hugged him so hard that nothing else seemed to matter. As Elias apologized for worrying her and noticed she hadn't eaten, he softly asked if she was ready to hear something important, because this time he promised not to let anything slip away again. After finally asking his mother to leave their dangerous home for good, the spy quickly sold a stash of rare items to a desperate buyer for a massive profit, used the cash to secure a new apartment for her, and then set his sights on finding the real villain while competing in an upcoming test that could earn him a spot alongside the elite. While his classmates swung back and forth between hype and fear over real dungeon combat. When the official training began with gravity cardio and students boasting about their sprint times, Elias Bly stepped up last to tell the instructor he wouldn't use the gravity room at all, leaving the man staring in pure disbelief as he asked, "Alas, Spy?" The instructor scoffed, mentioning he'd heard about Elias Spy's weekend scuffle with Magnus, but warned him not to get cocky just because he dropped a red tear, asking who exactly thought he could skip training, which instantly made the instructor snap and ask if Elias Spy thought something was wrong with his methods. Only for Elias Spy to respectfully but boldly explain that while cardio and gravity chambers were essential for most awakeners, shuttle runs mainly helped speed-based classes like warriors and assassins, while mages and enchanters needed elemental control practice instead, pointing out that different stat builds and combat styles require different training focus, which made the whole class go dead silent, because bro really just said that out loud. Even Four Eyes warned that shouting out the school's top trainer in public was basically a death sentence. But to everyone's surprise, the instructor laughed, clapped Elias on the shoulder, and admitted the logic was sound because the real problem wasn't the idea itself, but trying to customize training for hundreds of students before a life-changing combat drill. Teachers had to choose between guiding students' paths or letting them pick their own way. Watching the students look on with worry, Elias remembered how tough his past home life had been, but also how his mentors had kept him on track, so he looked the instructor in the eye and begged him to trust him for just one final show. As the instructor agreed to Elias B's request for a maximum stun elemental negation chamber, the nuclear warrior explained that he needed to secretly sharpen his weak points without revealing his god-level class or ace moves, so he kept his distance from classmates to avoid attachments slowing him down, even as the class rep jokingly challenged him to spar and got more excited when he politely declined, insisting he was flying solo. Later that day, after school, the energetic kid and Four Eyes chased him down, panting like tired NPCs, and Elias thought they were trouble until memory struck him that these two were actually his closest friends from his last life, the only ones who had been good company and shared his best moments back then. So he made a cold choice. To take revenge, he had to move forward all by himself. As they walked away muttering about how changed he was, Elias suddenly turned around to tell Four Eyes to get his lungs checked immediately, confusing them before hopping on his bike to insult their slowness, while secretly remembering that Four Eyes died young of lung disease in his last life, and silently hoping he'd survive this one. While the boys bickered over whether Elias Spy was a cold jerk, or just different, the scene shifted to Kai casually chatting with a big boss about a flashy new recruit who's tearing up the court guild. That same night, Elias Spy begged his mom to stop going out alone, promised to come home sooner with groceries, and worried that even that wasn't enough because he knew she needed a safe place soon. As the final scene cut to a Woken prison, where his father quietly slipped cash to a guard, whispering that he was trusting him, the guard replied calmly that everything was set and he'd be out tomorrow, setting the stage for things to go very, very wrong, while the eyes stayed calm because he basically cracked the mage side of things since it all boiled down to cast timing and clean elemental math, leaving the excited kid still grinding 10 shuttle sets like his life depended on it. By Wednesday, Four Eyes were running around as Elias quietly watched them until they invited him to dinner again. And he easily turned down the offer with his usual, "I need to head home early" excuse, which the excited one cheered as a win while the four-eyed ones just sighed, used to it by now. Before casually giving the excited kid advice to loosen up his archery form, Elias later sent him to get a lung check on a Thursday, where the doctor found early-stage tumors that surgery could fix, leaving the kid stunned and wondering how Elias had changed so much since warning him. Meanwhile, campus gossip exploded about Magnus cheating and climbing ranks, leading the kid to panic and sprint through the streets, fearing Magnus' retaliation, only to freeze when he remembered he was weak and should hide. But then his conscience pushed him past fear because Elias once saved his life, forcing him to break into the armory for a weapon despite being caught by the class rep, who immediately realized he wasn't joking when he shouted that Elias was in danger. While Elias rode his bike through the streets, shouting for his stalker to stop playing games, Magnus stepped out to claim payback with a surprise attack from behind, only for Elias to instantly shatter Magnus' weapon, calmly ask if he thought he was still stronger, then grab him by the neck and drive his blade into the ground beside Magnus' head, finally making it clear that the boy standing over him was someone Magnus would never catch up to. Magnus finally lost his temper and screamed in frustration, demanding to know how Elias leveled up and why it happened so fast. Magnus was losing his mind from training so hard he could barely reach level 4, ranting that Alias Spy shouldn't be faster until Alias Spy calmly pulled a dagger from the ground and pressed it against Magnus' neck, asking in a creepy calm voice if he'd ever actually died before, which instantly shut him up, though Magnus scoffed and said if Alias Spy wanted him gone, he should just do it, claiming Alias Spy always wanted him dead anyway. But Alias Spy surprised him by saying no, not enough, to kill him because Magnus had followed him alone instead of bringing a crew, showing he just wanted to see how he stacked up, which made Magnus explode again and threaten to come back to finish him if Alias didn't do it now, prompting Alias to sigh and admit Magnus really was that annoying. As eyes and the class reps watched from nearby, they saw that Magnus was already mentally broken before Elias casually dropped a bombshell by claiming he was expecting Magnus and offering him a deal. He promised to teach Magnus the secret to leveling up quickly, but only if Magnus gave him something in return later. They skipped straight to Friday after training ended, and the instructor announced the combat simulation. Even though they were just in a simulation, the students faced real sealed dungeons filled with demons, where most timidly picked safe E-rank missions while one brave student named Elias suddenly shouted that he wanted the deadly D-rank dungeon on his own, shocking everyone until a classmate stepped up to team with him, forcing the strict dean to reluctantly let them go while warning them not to get too arrogant. The instructor mocked them with sarcastic good luck as they headed into a suicide mission, only for an upperclassman named Julian to suddenly raise his hand and volunteer, though I internally shrugged since I'd never even heard of him before. Julian looked down on Elias, convinced this freshman had no idea what level he was playing at. With that, the instructor wrapped up the teams, declared that live-stream drones would broadcast every move, urged everyone to bring their all, and officially started the combat simulation, setting the stage for a public showdown to decide the true ruler. They built the Awakened Academy right on top of a huge demon cave they had finally defeated. Both the high school and middle school teams used the same field for their games. The big cave had given birth to many smaller caves around it, perfect for student practice, with most controlled and their dangers rated only F or D. So stepping inside meant starting a simulated fight that everyone could watch live, while every move was recorded and judged. As Elias walked into the dark cave with Scarlet and their guide, he knew he had to hide his true strength while holding onto the prize this dangerous place offered, especially since the guide confidently promised to keep them safe by boasting about his past wins while Scarlet watched the strange symbols on the wet walls. Just how tough are the monsters in a D-rank cave? The senior replied without turning, explaining that they usually range from level 5 to 15, with the school's most dangerous beasts kept locked away and rare boss types never appearing. Yet he warned not to underestimate even the strongest E-rank monsters. Sometimes their power and speed are so strong that you, who have just awakened, can't even ask them questions without being seen as foolish. So with a confident grin over his shoulder, he promised to find weaker enemies for you to earn credits, saying not to worry because he won't let you get hurt. But even as he spoke, Elias B. had already walked past him into the deeper tunnel with quiet, determined steps. The old man's smile faded, and he warned, if you rush this far ahead, you might just scare the monsters. Elias B. didn't slow down. He just said, you talk too much, with a voice that sounded like it was done for. The senior's body hardened as anger shook his reply. What? Scarlet watched with wide, nervous eyes while the live cameras broadcast the simulated combat to the entire student body. In a quiet monitoring room, officials and elite students watched the screens as the sharp-eyed vice captain smirked and pointed out a junior's choice of a weak D-rank dungeon, only for the comm captain to pause her work and stare at the screen where a confident boy named Elias was walking into the dark cave alone. Elias B's final order, don't need your help, hung heavy in the stale air, making the senior tremble with furious pride while Scarlet clutched her bag and the magical cameras broadcasted their panic to the academy, even as a boy named Four Eyes screamed in another dungeon to keep his support class from approaching. He stood in a sealed, dark labyrinth while a senior sighed beside him. You're just a chanter. Why isn't Asa here to buff us? But Four Eyes trembled in fear as he saw two monsters, a flame bat and a violent cat, sneaking through the gloom ahead, and he stammered, why is this scary F-class labyrinth so dangerous? His eyes grew even wider when he noticed more shapes moving. A vicious fawn, a star ferret, and others slipping out from the side tunnels. Everyone in the group froze in shock at the sudden swarm of weak monsters, while inside the sealed E-class labyrinth, the air grew heavy as a healer knelt beside a wounded boy with glowing hands, and another grim-faced boy stepped up to say, "If you can't handle this, I'll do it alone," before surging with power, summoning a spectral tiger that instantly tore through the charging beasts. Back in the sealed, deranked labyrinth, Elias moved with a quiet calm, while slicing through monsters like a scythe cutting wheat, with the dead body of a rage bear lying at his feet as just another one of many he had already defeated. Scarlet forgot her fear and felt only awe, asking how it was done while the senior beside her stared in shock, before a skittering sound revealed new spider-like monsters with too many eyes crawling out from cracks in the wall. Elias didn't even turn to face them, calmly explaining that the monsters were sealed and could only use half their power, which made Scarlet's eyes light up with excitement as she admitted that even fighting weakened foes, he was still far ahead of her. Elias finally looked up at her to tell her that she didn't need to copy anyone else, so she should just be herself. She puffed her cheeks and asked if I always had to sound so cool, so I promised to do my best. The senior was simmering with anger because you were hogging all the glory. He cleared his throat to sound like a leader and warned, "This is a D-class dungeon, so don't get too confident. As your senior, I must advise you that your first time in a 3-chamber maze is not easy." But Scarlet and Elias interrupted him to say, "You handle the monsters coming from the right." I chose the left path, and the seniors I twitched in annoyance before they ignored me and moved on, while Elias, a blur of sharp attacks, and Scarlet, who fought back with growing resolve after every block, quickly cleared the room and left the seething senior trailing behind like unwanted baggage, until the last monster faded and Elias asked if I could handle the next wave alone, causing Scarlet to blink in surprise and the senior to boil with anger at my disrespect. But Elias pressed on with flawless reasoning, reminding us that this battle was a true test of each of our personal skills, just as we had come to be judged. "Don't you want to get a high score?" Scarlet took a deep breath, her eyes hardening with certainty as she whispered to herself, "I understand. I can do this." Elias nodded and stepped toward the dark tunnel where scary growls waited, but the old teacher watched them part with a hurt heart and a dark face, silently pulling his cold weapon out as he planned revenge, while the students on the other side gasped in shock at how Elias was already fighting so many monsters, leaving their instructor stunned and unsure if he had truly grown into a much stronger class. And that wasn't even the end of it, because as soon as another step forward, he claimed the monsters on the left for himself and sent Scarlet off to the right. He matched the elements perfectly by sending the Flora user Scarlet against the Astro monsters, showing great tactical sense even in this test, which made the instructor watch Elias's calm, deadly movements on the screen with wide eyes. He recalled the boy's quiet promise before the trial, saying, "Teacher, trust me, I won't let you down in this graduation performance," which finally made the instructor slowly nod, realizing the child wasn't just bragging, but was speaking in a low, steady voice that left everyone wondering what he would do next. Down in the dungeon, Elias fought with cold focus, his mind sharp and clear, and I realized the beasts were all coming from the cave on the right. He kept a careful eye on Scarlet's battle from the sidelines, knowing her plant powers would easily crush these weaker enemies. A monster jumped at her from behind, but she spun around immediately and raised her hands. Thick vines burst up from the ground to form a wall of thorns that grabbed and held the monster fast. She didn't even pause before shouting out again. Mana flared around her as a sickly purple haze erupted from the poison vines, tightening until they crushed the writhing monster's shrieks and shattered it into fragments, confirming with a silent system notification that she had just killed the level 6 star roach. Scarlet panted hard, her face glowing with triumph as she whispered, "I did it again." Elias watched with new respect as a young mage named her, just starting her labyrinth journey, calmly used her plant skills to grow a poisonous vine wall that trapped and defeated higher-level monsters all by herself. She managed the monsters ahead, and with their sealed forms and his gaze tracking the floating camera, he realized he could hide his true power in front of the live audience to still score high, though he also needed to account for the equipment following them as he plotted his next move while the senior nearby fumed with jealousy at being ignored. "Since you two can handle everything yourselves," his eyes narrowed. A shimmering bow of light appeared in his hand as he knocked a glowing arrow and fired a warning shot past Elias to startle Scarlet, while a furious roar erupted behind her as a terrifying double-headed stone lion burst from the dark cave and charged straight at her. Elias's spy watched in horror as the lion charged at Scarlet, smashing right through her frantic vine wall like it was made of paper. It roared so loudly the cavern shook and then charged straight at her. "We're finished," she thought, her blood turning to ice. A flash of satisfaction crossed the senior's face, hidden behind a mask of feigned alarm, but Elias's body moved before his thoughts could fully form, as a surge of energy jolted through his limbs to instantly boost his speed by 50% based on how fast he reacted and how skilled he was. He vanished in a blur, leaping just over the lion to bring his sword down with a sharp, ringing clang. One of the lion's stone heads turned to block the hit, while the other lunged straight at Scarlet. In a split second, the air crackled as Elias used his peak speed to phase right through the obstacles. He popped back into view right in front of the charging maw, his weapon clashing with its bite in a shower of sparks before he slashed a deep cut across its rocky snout. Wow, how is this monster so fast? He thought, straining every muscle as he pushed back, keeping his sword steady against the beast's raw power. The senior watched with a smug grin, thinking, I know this dungeon too well, knowing that while most monsters are locked away, that double-headed stone lion at the cave entrance will keep coming back to life. No matter how brave you think you are, you're still just fresh recruits who will struggle to fight a D-class monster that I've secretly strengthened for you. The last bit of light from his arrow still glowed on the lion's fur, not to help his friends, but to mess with the monster's minds. With gravity cut to 1/10, damage soaring, and speed exploding, the fastest double-headed lion has gone berserk to slash with 10 times the attack power and dash 50% faster. Elias felt the crushing pressure and cursed himself for needing to go all out as he shoved the beast back and yelled at Christine. Fall back now. You can't fight this monster just yet. Even my own heart hammered against my ribs because I was genuinely scared for a second. But as the lion pulled back to charge again, Christine didn't step back, her face pale but hard with resolve, and she shouted at the vine wall. Suddenly, a thick wall of thorns shot up and stopped the lion in its tracks once more. Another and another layer quickly formed, weaving a thick, messy wall that briefly held the snarling monster in place. Even Elias was stunned by Christine's speed and determination, so he nodded as she asked to join the fight despite the danger, while nearby, a feral lion toward its vine prison in a rage that left the senior leader in shock that she wasn't already eaten. Elias studied her for a split second, seeing the fear in her eyes burn away into a fierce, stubborn light, and he gave a faint, almost imperceptible smirk, thinking he'd expected her to be scared senseless, but realizing she had recovered pretty quickly. As the lion's roar shattered the vines and dust filled the air, the two of us stood side by side with weapons ready, knowing this place was the ultimate test we had prepared for. Scarlet stared into Elias Spice's sharp eyes, her voice steady even with a rush of fear, knowing that his presence meant she wouldn't die, while he calmly pointed out that her magic was running low and she couldn't waste any more on her amazing triple-layered attack. A quick flash of memory showed Elias a bright, confident, and generous boy from his past, glowing like a scarlet light in middle school. There was a kind girl from a powerful family who became our serious class president, but I lost her in the crowd after that. Maybe she just lived out her days in quiet peace. His eyes locked onto her, standing firm against the roaring lion, and for now, she was the only one he could trust to help him hide his true power while passing their test. But the senior's sneer mocked their hope, questioning if their strength was enough to hold the vine wall or even survive a beast far beyond their level. He folded his arms and waited, promising to teach respect once you finally begged for help. Just as the lion gave one last savage heave and the vine snapped free to attack with fresh fury. Elias moved without hesitation to lead the charge and strike the elemental core, trusting that you'd know exactly when to act as the lion lunged. They moved in perfect sync, leaping apart in a split second to opposite sides of the cave. Elias' spy's mind spun wildly because I just heard him, making him lock onto me as his main target. He spun around and ran straight for the glowing shallow pool at the room's edge, fleeing the monster not by running away, but by diving toward the water. The lion roared and charged like a blur of stone and fury, but Elias dove into the water, his swift escape leaving ripples behind, while the beast plunged after him, churning the water violently as his shout echoed off the wet stones. From the bank, Scarlet thrust her hands forward as thick rope of vines burst from the mossy floor to snare the lion's legs and torso just as it struggled in the water, and she grunted with effort as she commanded the vines to pull. The huge beast was dragged, roaring and twisting as it was pulled from the water and onto the stone, completely trapped, while Scarlet's glowing green eyes triggered a poison bloom that wrapped the vines tighter around it with crushing force. A sickly purple cloud oozed from the thorns and soaked into the beast's hard skin, turning its angry roar into a choking gurgle and slowing its wild movements until it was paralyzed by the poison. Elias emerged from the water, dripping but calm, and walked toward the trapped monster as his sword shone in the dungeon's glow, knowing it could not break free now. The senior, who had secretly sharpened the lion's blade and set the trap, stared in disbelief because a single thin strip of vine bind had managed to trap the mighty beast. Even the enhanced beast couldn't be easily subdued, as its composure finally cracked under the water's pressure that weakens its land skills while boosting the plant-based powers, allowing the team to easily defeat the stronger monster through simple counters and teamwork. Impressing the instructor, who noted the boy's outstanding quick thinking and leadership, suggesting he'll take first place, while the lady beside him adjusted her glasses and confirmed that only finishing off the lion remains before the recording earns him the highest score in Academy history. Suddenly, the screen flickered and a live feed died, turning into static before going black, just as the technician frowned at the lost signal, while the senior in the dungeon smirked, knowing the drone was broken and that without video proof, the other person had ruined his chance for the high score. Elias B. turned to Scarlet and praised her perfect timing, but she simply shook her head with a smile, saying she was just following his orders, only for him to strike the final blow on the dissolving level 11 double-headed stone lion, earning him 100 experience points, while he calmly explained that her training in elemental control allowed her to trap the beast with a single skill, leaving her surprised he'd noticed before a senior member cut in to dismiss their celebration and brush past them. With barely contained disdain, Elias stopped him with a voice as cold and sharp as a blade, reminding everyone exactly why boosting a low-level monster would be a disaster for first-time dungeon explorers, and after he slowly turned to show a hardening face, he clarified that he only meant to help the girl, leaving them to wonder who actually told her to dodge. Elias B. stated flatly, "Then your skills must be terrible. As an archer, is that the best your aim can be?" Scarlet's eyes grew wide as she finally understood why she'd been rejected from the elite squad last year. Right as the senior's patience snapped. "What are you guys talking about?" he shouted, instantly summoning his glowing bow again, the weapon humming with aggressive intent. Elias quickly moved, throwing himself in front of the senior to protect Scarlet. The old man shook with burning rage as he glared down at Elias. But then, straining with visible effort, the senior forced himself to lower his bow and sneered at him. He shoved past them, leaving them behind with only a long road to face, and walked into the gloom of the tunnel exit. Scarlet let out a frustrated sigh once he was gone, thinking that Senior's personality was really annoying, only to notice Elias wasn't reacting to her, but staring at the shattered remains of the observation drone on the cavern floor. Elias's mind raced ahead, realizing that someone must have blown the feed to keep us from the high score, leaving us unseen while the others were far away, and that guy would need an incident report just to get back in. A slow, calculated smile spread across his lips, giving Elias Spy just enough time to whisper aloud that he's actually done a favor and now has a chance to finish what's left. Scarlet was shocked and asked, "What do you mean? What are you planning to do?" Elias By walked toward the glowing magical seal blocking the deepest chamber and turned to her, asking the class president to keep what happened next a secret, adding that even if she spoke, no one would believe her. "No one would believe me," and Scarlet's confusion grew as she asked, "What on earth are you planning to do?" Elias grabbed his pocket with his hand and found a cold, lumpy stone inside. He remembered his bargain with Magnus, but Elias had a secret price to pay. The seal-breaking stone he took from his uncle and pressed against the barrier to unleash a dangerous swarm of monsters that Scarlet desperately tried to stop. It won't be two people because Elias got interrupted. Scarlet stared in shock as Elias By didn't raise his sword, but instead pulled a glowing staff from his bag to show he could use magic too. Scarlet froze as Elias's sharp command cut through the rising roar of the monsters, telling her to hold the exit. As the first wave of monsters burst from the open depths, giant shapes with glowing eyes roared into the light. Scarlet shouted, "Watch out!" But Elias By was already in motion, his power shifting from a warrior's sharp focus to a mage's humming energy. He changed his class, sank his rank to E, and his staff flashed with a freezing cold that burst from its tip, instantly turning the damp cave air into ice that coated the floor and encased the charging lions in a shell of frozen stone, stopping them dead in their tracks. Scarlet's eyes went wide with shock as she realized he had mastered the rare S-rank skill of controlling 3 lions at once, while she could barely manage even one. "These monsters have been trapped inside for so long that they'll all rush out at once," Elias said calmly in the chaos, "and I need a bigger space." Scarlet didn't wait a second, sprinting back through the tunnel and leaving the fight behind, just as 3 burning shadows stepped out of the dark. Level 12 flame leopards with coats, so hot they melted the ice on the ground. Elias thought clinically that even though these D-class monsters have been sealed for so long, their power is now at least half as strong as it used to be. He lifted his staff once more, sending out a blast of cold energy to trap the leopards, but from his blind spot, a level 13 monster with a giant, beast-like lung and a fire saber tooth emerged, its molten-hot fangs aiming straight for his back. As if by magic, Elias B. vanished from his spot and reappeared several meters away, instantly shifting from a mage to a powerful warrior, parrying a beast attack with a blade of energy before freezing another creature solid with a sudden burst of ice. Scarlet's surprise slowly turned into realization as he showed how easily he could switch jobs, and now I finally see why he needed to train elemental resistance. Her mind word, linking what she'd learned to the show before her, realizing that a mage simply pushes out raw energy or shapes the natural elements around them. Once I believed that raw strength and spell count made you powerful, but I learned that true elemental power is wild, ancient, and hard to tame. Her eyes stayed fixed on Elias, the calm center in a chaos of teeth and fire, and I realized that keeping power under control matters more than anything. You can only unlock new moves for your power once you have fully mastered it. She watched in awe as Elias turned one simple skill into a masterpiece, freezing, trapping, and controlling over a dozen monsters with effortless precision, while she realized she had never even imagined such total mastery. Watching Elias fight made Scarlet feel like she and everyone else had been left behind long ago. She watched him, a lone figure holding back a flood of monsters with impossible grace, feeling a warm flutter in her chest as she realized she was deeply attracted to him. Right before the cavern shook and a final guardian rose from the depths. It was the spirit Jade Labyrinth Lord, a hell mammoth of level 15 whose power was held back by an old seal, yet its massive tusks and armored skin still made it look like a towering wall. Elias B's eyes narrowed with focus as the mammoth charged like a living avalanche of fury, prompting him to seamlessly switch back to his nuclear warrior form and unleash raw energy straight at you. As the giant beast lunged toward him, Elias exploded forward, dodging the charge and slashing its ankle and tusk base with deadly, whirlwind-like precision. Even though the monster was trapped, a level 10 monkey with a perfect aim would still win, he thought with a grim smile. Furious from the pain, the mammoth went crazy and smashed everything in its path, but that only gave Elias a chance to strike its weak spots. His attacks were a relentless series of surgical strikes, tearing into tendons and eyes and exploiting gaps in its stony armor, with each critical hit chipping away at its stability and spreading cracks across its form. The giant mammoth stumbled with a knee giving way, and in that split second of weakness, Elias caught a burst of aura and slashed forward, vanishing in a flash of light that seemed to cut through everything in its path at once. The skill's aftermath left the air so still and cold that no one dared to speak. The remaining fierce flame leopards, a straggling double-headed hyena, and other creatures froze before dissolving into motes of light. A silent notification echoed in his perception. Idol achieved, 1 against.